friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here for part 7 of the Prepper's Purse and Go Bag series. Can you believe there can be so many parts to a purse and more? But this has been developing, this whole series, as I've been going along. And I see something more that is probably going to stem off of this, that will go deeper into preparedness when you're looking at getting your vehicles ready for whatever. But because most of what I've got here, like this go bag that I'm going to finally get to what's in the main pouch of today, this is all part of that. So be watching for more on this as we go along. And though this might be the final part on the go bag or the purse, I may still be doing some update videos that I'll add to this as I consider more things that I may want to change up or add to my bags down the road. And don't forget, if you haven't seen the first 6 parts of this series, I will put the link to that playlist in the description box down below, so don't forget to hit show more. So before we get to finally get to what's in the main pouch of my go bag, let's talk about a couple other items that I like to keep in the rig, whatever rig it is that we're going to be traveling in, especially if we're going out of town. And one of those things is going to be a good pair of warm and waterproof boots. So these are my favorite pair personally. I've had a few different pairs, but this has been the best pair I've personally bought. Now what you choose is got to be entirely up to you. The brand name of this one is the Itasca, and it's got the Thinsulate lining. I love the camo on it. Totally waterproof. I've trekked around in mud puddles. I've stepped right in a stream in these boots and have not had my feet get wet at all. So I love these. And then the benefit of these too, to me, is because I have very small feet, was I was able to buy these in the children's department and save a little money on them that way, because when you're able to wear children's shoes, you can save as much as $20 or more on a nice pair of boots if they happen to carry them in the children's sizes. So these turned out perfect. And then the great thing was, as I came across another pair just like these, just a size bigger, at a garage sale for only $1, and I went ahead and bought them. And those are good boots for just like slipping my feet into and going when I have to go trek outside, you know, the chicken coop or out front or whatever, in the mud puddles and all that kind of stuff, that in snow during the winter. So I'm really glad I grabbed those. I knew I couldn't pass them up because I figured if nothing else, I can wear real thick socks with them. But anyway, great boots. I recommend whatever you find that works best for you. You should try a few different pairs before you invest in any, and make sure you try them on. I don't recommend buying boots online when it comes to that. You want to try them on, walk around in them a little bit, and get a good idea how they're going to fit and feel, and make sure that you check into them and see if they truly are a good warm and waterproof boot. And then the other thing I mentioned in a previous video about keeping like a wool blanket. We have wool blankets that we got a pretty good price on. Wool blankets are excellent choice to keep in your rigs. And in that video, I don't remember which one it was in this particular series, but I recommend you go through the whole series anyway. I did link to I was able to find it for still the same price that we bought it for, and it was 80% wool. It's really hard to find a good wool blanket that's got that high a percentage of wool for a decent price, and 100% wool is almost impossible to find unless you look on eBay for older used blankets, and even then they're really expensive. So I'll go ahead and put that link again in this video down below. So wool blanket is a really good idea to keep in your rigs. We try to keep one in each of our rigs. And then another idea is to make yourself a quilt if you're into quilting at all. This particular quilt laying here is actually pretty old. It's been well used. It's one of my earliest quilts that I made using denim and flannel shirts. So what I have here, this flannel that you can see here, this is from some of Patrick's heavier weight flannel shirts that were getting holes in them and just getting wore out in general. And so I even left parts of the pockets and sometimes whole pockets on these, just like I do with the jeans. Like this pair of jeans was a pair I wore back in my early 20s. And, you know, I just cut those up and then put a flannel backing on this, and these make good, heavy, and warm blankets to use. They're going to take up a little more room and be a little more heavy though than your wool blanket, and that's why I recommend the wool blanket, but these are still a good option. We have kept these in our rigs before. When Patrick was having to commute to work, he actually had both. He had one of these in his car plus a wool blanket plus a whole box of stuff that he could be prepared for whatever happens if he can't make it home. So that will be for a future video going over that. So anyway, let's move on to this bag and what I've got in the middle here. Now keep in mind, whatever you choose to put in your bag is going to have to be tailored to you. I'm only giving you some ideas based on what I have and what works for me. So here is my biggest first aid kit that I have on hand. And in this pouch right here, I have several of these little packets that I did a video on. These are herbal remedies for various things, and I will link to that video in the description box down below. And so I've got those in here. So I've got one for pain, one for stomach ailments, and one for topical wound care. And then inside you can see I'm not going to break all of this down, but I have all kinds of stuff from eye patches to steri strips, which take place of a regular suture. I would also like to get some regular sutures in here as well. I was thinking we had some, but I got to looking through here and I don't. But I have every kind of bandage there is, big and small, even the butterfly bandages. This is very recommended because these can also work in place of it, depending on the wound of stitches. And then another pack of the hand warmers in here. I also keep foot warmers on hand. But anyway, various things. What else? There's something else in here. I have a pair of, here we go. So I have a pair of scissors for cutting the tape and the gauze. I've got some alcohol prep pads. I believe there's a pair of sterile gloves in here somewhere. Oh, here they are. I knew I had a pair of surgical gloves in here. So there's a pair or two. I don't know how many are in here. So now Patrick has in his bug out bag a very similar first aid kit setup. I don't have any of these because this is a new thing. I haven't added any of these to his yet, but I will be getting some in there eventually. So there's that. So I have, just like everything else, if you watch my previous videos, I have various levels of each thing, and whether it be my little wallet, my purse, my sling pack, and then my actual go bag right here. Now a lot of this stuff might seem a little over the top or just too repetitive, but I think there's certain things you can just never quite have enough of, and that, and that includes your first aid, ways to light fires, and so on. With that in mind, let's move on to some other things, right, like what I have in this bag right here. Now, keep in mind, I have long since been in menopause, so there are things in here like these that I don't use anymore. In fact, I haven't used these in many years because several years back, before I stopped having my monthly cycle, I had switched to my own homemade cloth napkins, which I also still keep those on hand. I have one in here, in fact, enclosed in a plastic bag. Why do I still keep these on hand? Because there's so many other things these kind of things can be used for. So same thing with these. When I stopped using the throwaway kind, I saved them because all of these can be used for two different things. They can also be used as wound care because they're very, very absorbent, but they're also very flammable, so they can be used as tinder for starting fires. So I have several of those in this bag. I have a spork. This was kind of a neat little thing here. It's not just the spork, but it's got a bottle opener. It has these various wrenches, size wrenches you can use for whatever. And plus it has the little carabiner, so if you want to hook it onto something, that's pretty handy. I think we bought these at our local store over in the sporting goods department. And we have a video that I just did a quick one on. I didn't go over every section of the store. We have a couple of convenience stores, but we have one big store in our town that has got kind of an everything. It has a clothing department, shoe department, has a sporting goods department, and our sporting goods department is pretty excellent. And you can find all kinds of great things like this in there. So that's where we've gotten a lot of our various things, including our bags. But this brand I know you can also find on, this is called Alps Outdoors. And you can find these on Amazon. I don't know if this particular bag is available on there, but I can link to at least a search for this brand name. I'm very happy with this. I have some Ziploc bags. Just, there's nothing in them. They're just there in case we need them for whatever. And another lighter, because we have lots of lighters. I keep tons of them on hand. Some super glue. The great thing about super glue now is years ago, when back in, I think it was the 70s that it came out, that it would get to be the big thing. It was so expensive for one little tube, but now you can go to your dollar store, whichever dollar store you have close to you, and usually you can buy a pack of 4 for $1. So get some of that and keep some super glue on hand. That can also be used for wound closure if need be. Now these I wouldn't necessarily say are the warmest pair of gloves, but I did make myself a pair of camo mittens that I then took a glue gun and added a little bit of stuff right there to it just to give it some grip if I need to use it, since these are just mittens. And then I made myself I used to make quite a bit of these, but then I never really wore them that much. However, I'm not too big into hats except for my straw cowboy hat in the summertime. But this is something that I can use to wrap not only pull my hair back, but also to help keep my ears and the rest of my head warm. So it's just a hand crocheted head scarf, but I also made sure I did kind of some natural, neutral type colors. Now this here, this is one of the things I wanted to talk about, that in a situation where you may have to trek for a very long time with a bag and you might want to lighten your load, this is one of the things that I would likely leave behind. However, as far as keeping it in the rig, if we're just going to have to camp out of our rig for a little bit, this can be a really good thing to have on hand. I found these on Amazon years ago, long before we started our channel. And if they still have them, I'll go ahead and put a link to these sets below, but they came with their own little carrying pack. And what they are is a set of pots for cooking with. And so this has this little thing that closes it. This actually folds out and it can be a handle to be used kind of like a frying pan. And this lid also doubles as a plate. And it can also be cooked on. You can see it's got a copper bottom there. And then what we did was we took some old t-shirts, cut them up. We take old t-shirts and turn them into rags. So we took one of those t-shirt rags to put in here to keep things, because by itself it's very noisy. It rattles around quite a bit. But we wrapped our pots, because we each have a set, in the t-shirt rag to keep them from rattling around in the bag. So inside the skillet is another little pot with its own handle and a lid. So it can make a really nice way to cook things when you need to. But again, as I said, this would be something that would just add extra bulk and weight to your bag, that in a really tight situation, if you're having to trek for a long distance, that may be something you don't want to keep in there. So we'll put that back together, and then we just snap the lid, the handle in place, and that keeps it from coming apart. And then, really this little pouch is not super necessary, but it keeps it together and nice, and you can also just hang it on something if you need to. And I have another source of purifying water in this bag, like I do in my purse. And if you want to see what that is, it's what I keep in my purse is different than what I keep in here, because it's a lot smaller. But this was one of the first ones to come out, so we bought these first, and that's the Life Straw. If you're going to invest in some kind of water purifier, I recommend you going with the one that I have in my purse. And so, because that one's going to filter out a lot more water, and it takes up less room than the Life Straw. But again, these were the first ones to come out on the market that was something that was smaller that you could carry, and it even has its own lanyard. And I will go ahead and put the link though down to the Sawyer, which is the one that's in my purse, and I recommend that one. You can actually get a good price if you buy like a pack of 4, of a family of 4, then everybody can have one for their own bag, and then, or you can just have spares for keeping in different places. A pair of wool socks, good idea to keep some wool socks in there. And actually I got that idea from the last time we did a video where we're going through our bags like this, and I was like, why didn't I think to have socks in there? So it's always good to get interaction from people, because there's going to be things that you just don't think of. No, I'm not going to talk about everything that's in here, but we'll go over at least a couple more things. I have another one of the ponchos, like I mentioned in another video. So the ponchos, I'm not going to pull all this out, but the ponchos like this are a really great idea, the military style that have the snaps, because they can be used not only to protect yourself from wind, rain, they can also be made into a shelter because of the way they're set up with grommets and snaps. You can snap 2, 3, 4 of them together to even make a big shelter out of. But even on their own, you can make a little tent just for a single person out of your poncho. So it has many purposes, and I think the poncho is one of the more important things to have in your bag because of its many uses. And I also have, it looks like I need to retie it. It somehow has come loose. But we also have more paracord in here. And I'm going to leave that out so I remember to tie it, to get it tied back up. I don't know how it came undone, but a good chunk of paracord that can be used to tie up your poncho to make it into a tent or whatever it is you need it for. And oh, and that reminds me, what's on here? My laces. I took out the original laces that were on these boots, and if you remember, I talked about, and that's where we got this too, we bought a couple of large, like 500 yards each of paracord, it's the 550 weight, at our local store for a pretty good price. And so some of that I used to replace the laces in my boots. Now they don't stay tied as nicely as I would like, but the laces that came with these boots didn't stay tied as well either. So I'd rather have the paracord in there because this can be used if need be. You can take these laces out and also use them as an emergency source of cordage, like some other things I talked about in earlier videos. So please don't forget to check out those videos if you're curious. Now in here I have a little pocket that has more. I have a couple more cans of sardines in here, and I thought I had some more food, my homemade food ration bars, but I'm not finding them in there. So I'm thinking I might need to make some more of those and get some in here. But at least I know another bag that I have some in. And there's actually 2 more lighters in here. Good grief. Every bag I have has some kind of lighter in it. And I have various types of lighters too, not just the regular fuel ones. So those ones are the easiest to use, and that's why we keep a bunch on hand. However, those can break. So having the ferro rod and your magnesium lighters are some other really good options to have. The ferro rod I like much better than the little square cheap magnesium lighter. But what was interesting was we put this is one of the things we put in our bags years ago, and somebody brought this up on a previous video in the comments. Well, what this is it's called Right in the Rain. So it's made to be waterproof, but you can use pencil or pen on this. And so it's just something to have on hand. Whatever your situation is, you may need something like this to take notes on. I believe it's a very important item. I would never have thought of it if it hadn't been for Patrick. Patrick actually, because of his previous job, when he was working outside the home, he needed to have stuff like this on hand all the time for taking notes in, because he was always constantly having to work out in the rain, and so having something that was waterproof to write on was very beneficial to him. So because of that, he thought to get us some and put them to keep in our bags. Oh, and I see I have another emergency blanket in here and a few other things. But anyway, so that's the main pouch there. And I can see already by looking through that something that's missing from my bag, and that is some of my food ration bars. So I make my own food ration bars, and if you're interested in the recipes, I will link to my most recent one in the description box down below so you can check it out for yourself. That's the chocolate ones, but my favorite ones are the ginger ones. So those ones were really good. And I said this in a previous video, but I had made them about 3 years ago, and last year I pulled out one out of one of our bags. Maybe that's why there's not one in here. This might have been the bag I took it out of. I had pulled out the package of the ginger food ration bars that I made from scratch and tried it because I wanted to see how it turned out, and I wanted to do that before I shot the next video on the recipe with the chocolate. And come to find out, they were just as tasty and as good as they were the day they went in. They tasted just as fresh. And so I keep them in Mylar bags to keep them fresher that way and get as much of the air out as you can. And if you can vacuum seal it, that's even better. I never could quite figure out how to get it to vacuum seal right, even using the little corrugated strip and all that. I just couldn't get it to work for me. But they, even without them being vacuum sealed, they still stayed very fresh in the Mylar bags for 2 years. In the bug out bag, in the go bag, in the car, being exposed to hot, cold. It was amazing. So I know I can attest to the fact that it works. Okay, so another thing that I saw at the bottom of this bag that I didn't bother to pull out was a third water bottle with water in it, because water is so important. But you obviously, as I'm sure you figured out, this bag as is quite heavy. And again, I mentioned the bag and how looking for the hip pads in my last video. But here's the deal. In a real, like I said with the pots, when it comes to a serious situation, like if I have to leave the vehicle and what I would be doing is going through my purse, my sling pack, and this, and deciding what do I need the most and what can I live without if I absolutely have to, because I can make do with my water purifier or whatever. Some things will be left behind. The pots and pans would be some of those things. Some of the superfluous redundant items might be items I will leave behind, just so long as I at least have a way to light fires. I would say at least 2 ways to light fires. Have some tinder on hand, though. If you're out in the woods, it's easy to find all sorts of tinder. Like around here, it would be the pitch. We have a lot of trees that can get very pitchy. I believe it's the hemlock that gets the little bubbles of pitch on it, and you can just get those little bubbles of pitch and easily start a fire with that and use it to get going. But still, one of the issues with being in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of the things out here can be very soggy and wet. Still a good idea to have some sort of dry tinder with you. So you got to just weigh out what you think you're going to need according to where you are, your situation, how far you think you're going to have to trek, and so on. It's a lot easier to pack way more than you need to start with and toss things as you go and realize what you don't need than to not start off with enough. So you can't really have too much, because you can always leave stuff behind or even toss things along the way when you realize, nope, my pack is too heavy, I don't need this is not important. And so those are things just to keep in mind. Oh, and while I'm thinking about the fire thing, a few years ago, Patrick did a couple of videos that was started by Dutch over at Keeping It Dutch. And they were supposed to be funny videos. They were just jokes, and you might be interested in them. He did 2. The first one was how to open a can without a can opener. And the second one was how to start a fire without a match. Now just remember, these are spoof videos. I'm gonna go ahead and link to both of those below, because some of you may just find them quite funny, because I thought Patrick did a really good job on them. So check those out, but make sure you watch them in order, because the second video, the fire one, plays off the first video a little bit, and you may not get a certain part of it if you watch it out of order. So anyway, you can check those out just for fun, but let's be realistic. And when we're talking about fires, and consider some of the things I have in here. Stick with things that are going to be lightweight and small whenever possible, just like with your water purifier. Now I do keep the life straw in here because I have it, but I can always, in a pinch, if I want to switch out to the smaller, longer lasting, will filter more gallons than the life straw Sawyer, then that's what I would definitely switch those out, or at least have both on hand if I can manage to have both of them in here with all the other things that I find to be necessary. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to check out the rest of this series. Be watching for more updates as we go along and keep going through our bags and getting new ideas and adding to them as we go. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.